Good morning, everyone. Welcome. Today is March 27th, and we're here to talk about OCM. It's Organizational Change Management is our topic. Thank you so much for joining. We are the SD-COE EPMO team down here in San Diego, Central San Diego. So just wanted to kick off our presentation and workshop today, letting you know a little bit about who we are. My name is Perry, and I serve as our Senior Director of the Enterprise Project Management Office at SD-COE. On our team, we have Risa Fickett, Senior Project Manager, Andrew Baldwin, Project Manager, Candace Wong, Project Management Assistant. And all four of us have worked at SD-COE for anywhere from 5 to 20 years. Yes, Andrew, 20? Okay. And so we have history here at our organization. We also came from different parts of the org. So some of us have backgrounds in cybersecurity and network, others in AV and more technical hardware, HR background, teacher background, instructional design, data systems. We've actually got quite a smattering of all sorts of topics in our toolkits. And so we were formed about 4 to 5 years ago, as a formal project management office. And we sit inside of our IT division, and we support initiatives that impact people. And so at the top right, you can see it says about us. So we are responsible for developing methodology, tools, and templates to help others in our IT division with how we manage projects. We offer project management services. So we actually can run a project. We might help guide others through a project. We could consult as needed. And a big part of what we do is education and training, such as this workshop that you're at. And something we strongly believe in as our philosophy is people, process, technology, in that order. And the reason I call that out is you're going to be hearing a lot today about people. And when people think about a tech department or an IT staff member, people isn't often the first thing that comes to mind, but that's something that we really believe in because all of the work that we do really does impact people. And when you think about projects and project management, sure, there's all the tasks and the stuff, but at the heart of it, it's the people getting it done. So with that, we're talking about impacting our stakeholders or our interested parties in our projects. They're also impacted. So those are the people part of the equation. So that's a little bit about us. Let's talk about you. So this was interesting for us. We've been offering workshops over the last few years. And what's really exciting today is if you look at the state of California, 11 regions, we had at least one person from each region in the state register for today's workshop. So we were very thrilled to see that, that there's high interest in these types of topics. And yeah, it's really cool. It's really neat to see all the friends we've made in the last few years. So keep coming is what we're saying. We're really enjoying the partnership, and we don't necessarily see ourselves as the big brains that know it all. We're all the big brains together, and we're all sharing this information. So that's been really neat. But just starting with a really brief roll call, just wanted to show you who's here. Up at Region 1, up in the northern part of the state, we have one person who's registered from Humboldt County. And then in Butte County, up in Region 2 from Butte County, one person. Region 3, we've got Placer, Sacramento, and Yolo counties. That's right. Give those applauses. Region 4 is represented by Alameda, San Francisco, San Mateo, and Solano counties. In Region 5, we've got Monterey, Santa Clara, and Santa Cruz here. Love those reactions. Region 6, welcome to San Joaquin and Stanislaus. Working our way to Central California in Region 7, we've got one person who registered from Fresno. Awesome. Region 8, representatives from Kern County and Santa Barbara. Region 9, down here our way, we've got Imperial, Orange, and San Diego. And then moving up kind of more off on the east side, we've got 14 people registered from San Bernardino. Wow, San Bernardino. You guys were on a Trivial Pursuit card I had recently. It was like, what's the largest county something? And San Bernardino was the answer. All right, and Region 11, Los Angeles. Hello, welcome. And this was interesting. Out of state, we've gone national. So hi, Missouri and New York. Good to be friends. Yeah, welcome. And then one partner, we've got our friends from site here today. So awesome, 24 counties represented, 64 LEAs total, 96 registered. This is recorded, so if someone did register and they couldn't attend, that video is still available to everyone. And if you have friends you'd like to pass this to after, please feel free. Okay, so that's us. Thanks for going through the roll call. Let's talk next a little bit about this little cartoon here. You might have seen this one before. Okay, so we've got first guy, upgrade, middle guy, no thanks. Last one, we are too busy. And you might have heard this sentiment before, you might have felt this sentiment yourself, but this is just one reason why we need to consider organizational change management for our projects. We've got this fabulous idea of the wheel. It's going to make life so much better and you should have it. Yet there are people out there who just say, nah, we don't need that. So we need to consider how we can incorporate actual strategies into our project to help with adoption. And that's what today's really about. So with that, our workshop goals are built off of that concept. And when we leave, we would love it if you're able to say, first, I know the 5 different types of adopters. There's 5 different types. So what are they? Which one are you? Number 2, I can identify why initiatives aren't adopted. The data and science show that there are reasons. And so that's part of what we're presenting to you today is some work that we've obtained through partners like Infotech Research, and just some of the work that comes from the work that we've been doing. And then number 3, I can choose techniques to facilitate adoption. There are ways that you can help make adoption go a little better. And so that's part of today's workshop is identifying what those techniques are and matching them to the types of projects that you do. So what you can expect today is an opportunity for active learning. If you've never been to one of our workshops, I just wanted to prep you. This is not a traditional sit and get, so there will be opportunities to discuss, to use the chat, to react like you already have. And also we'll be taking a break around 11:05, between 11 and 11:10 we'll say, but we're targeting 11:05 for a 10-minute break. And then last, there are some files. We emailed you the files, so if you haven't checked your email yet, they're sitting in your inbox if you registered. You can also click here for session handouts right here on the screen. And if you want to give this a whirl, if you click that link on the screen, it should pop open your web browser and take you to where the files are stored. And again, please feel free to share the materials with other folks. They will also be posted on our website when we're all done with the session, including the PowerPoint. We opted to keep the PowerPoint, and we'll be sending that out and posting it. All righty. So just a couple of other things about Teams. Just want to make sure that everyone's aware that we welcome you to keep your camera on during our session. And please just be responsible for muting and unmuting when needed. And so those are 2 of the primary buttons in your Teams functions. There is a button for chat. And so you can type a question there as we're going, and we're monitoring that. Sometimes we'll ask you to put something in the chat, so that's where you'll go to do that. And then there's a raise hand, and that is if you have a question and you want us to call on you. And that will put a little hand icon in your window, and you can just lower your hand. React, there's a little smiley face icon. That's the one where you can give the heart, the thumbs up, and so on. So let's try the React right now, because we're going to ask you to do that one later. Can you find React and give us a reaction? Let's test that out. There we go. Awesome. Looking good. And then we just ask if you could please be present, listen actively, ask questions. That's makes it more engaging for all of us. We will honor our start and end times, and we do always aim to have a little joy and fun in our sessions. So hopefully you'll feel that too. Okay, so I've got a prep question for you as a warm-up, and I put this in the chat earlier for those of you who got here before we started recording. So the warm-up question is just to consider right now, think of a project that wasn't adopted at work. Now, you can think of this in 2 different ways. One way might be you were trying to roll something out, you and your team, or you had something, and the people, your stakeholders, your interested parties, your colleagues, whoever they are, they didn't pick it up. That's one way to think about it. The other way to think about it is something was implemented for you or happened to you that you didn't choose to adopt, or you saw others around you not really interested in changing. Okay. Now, if you already have an idea in mind, this is a good place to use the chat. Could you open the chat up? And can you just put the name of the project, like what the project was or the initiative? We don't need any more context than that. I'm just kind of curious to get a smattering of what it looked like. Okay, so Monday.com adoption with the executive leadership team, esports, MFA, DHCP appliances, digital time and attendance. Oh, Erin, wow, we need to talk about that one. That's something that we've been talking about here at work. A new help desk system. Report cards. Oh, goodness, report cards are a biggie. Red herring. Another Monday. Okay, adoption of different types of software, grading alignment, so changing process. Large tech overhaul. Awesome. Great. Didn't seem like that was too hard for us to think of ideas, right? Okay, so what we would like you to do, this is part of our warm-up, and yes, you might be put into a room with people you don't know yet, but trust us, by the end of the session, you're going to know them, all right? So we're going to put you into a room, 4 people, and it could be someone from your county or across the state or outside of state, because we saw that registration list. We want you to just kind of do a brief share out. And what we're trying to get you to get to is thinking a little bit through maybe why it wasn't adopted. So you got the name of the project in your mind. You've identified that part, but dig a little bit deeper and try to think about what was going on. So on your turn, spend 1 to 2 minutes. You'll have 8 minutes total, and it could look like this. Hi, I'm Danica from ABC Unified. I'm the tech director at my district. A few years ago, we put in new Apple TVs in our meeting rooms and our classrooms. We quickly discovered that most staff weren't using them. I'm pretty sure they didn't adopt it because they didn't know all the benefits. They didn't see all the things that they could do with it. And I think really they were scared because they didn't really want to mess anything up, right? Something as simple as that. Just trying to give a little bit of context around where the that distance to the adoption came from. Okay. Quick and easy. And then later on this morning, we're actually going to be putting you back into breakout rooms with the same group. And there will be an exercise around finding solutions for a project such as this one that you brought up. Okay. All right, Candace, I think we're ready to hit that button to send everyone out, and we'll see everyone back here in 8 minutes. And when we get back, there's actually not much of a share out. We're going to keep moving forward. All right. Welcome back. Glad you got a chance to meet some other people and get warmed up, right? Okay, so let's put some of this into context now. You've thought of a project, you've heard from others, you've talked through a little bit about the why. So I'm going to present to you 5 reasons why people typically resist adopting something. And this is coming from some research that we obtained from Infotech research company. Why do some stakeholders resist the change? Confusion. That might be what your situation is related to. Anxiety. Something called false starts or treadmill. That one is typically where people can start to adopt and then for whatever reason they slip back. I'm thinking about me with Outlook. I use Outlook at work. There's something called New Outlook, and I keep turning it on and using it for literally like 30 minutes, and then it's just not worth it to me enough. So I always go back to old Outlook. I've done that 3 times now. Something's not there to push me forward. Resistance. I just don't want to change. That could be something. Frustration. These are typically why stakeholders resist change, or these are typically things that we might see or experience. So ultimately, our goal is to reduce these. We don't want these. We're coming up with these awesome solutions around data or systems or security or education, whatever it is, process change to make things better. We want people to adopt our solutions. So just considering these 5, this is another chat opportunity. Thinking back to the project you identified that you spoke about with your small group, what did you see? Did you see any of these? And if you can, put it in the chat. So if you saw anxiety or if you saw confusion or more than one, let's see what that looks like. A lot of resistance so far. Resistance with an exclamation point. Okay, all of them. All of the above. Okay. So seeing a lot of resistance, seeing some false starts, seeing a little bit of a smattering of everything else. Okay, so we can apply OCM strategies in our projects to help combat a lot of this. There's things that we can do to be proactive. All right. Before we do that, let's just present to you a real solid definition of what OCM is. All right. This is coming from ProSci. They are the global leader in change management. And here's what it sounds like. OCM is the application of a structured process and a set of tools to manage the people side of change. All right, so we're not talking about systems right now, we're talking about people. All right, so it's the application of a structured process and a set of tools to manage the people side of change. We're trying to move from a current state to a future state, okay, such that the desired results of the change and the expected return on investment are achieved. All right, so really we're talking about if we invest time, energy, and money in a project and we roll it out, we want to see the results of the change and get that ROI also from the people side. That's what the formal definition says. All right. So you've heard a definition. You've considered 5 reasons why, or 5 things that we see when people don't adopt, and we've started to internalize what this is. We're going to hand to Risa, and she's going to share now the types of adopters that are out there.
All right, thanks, Perry. So thanks for that nice warm up. I hope you guys got a chance to really kind of dig into some of your projects and why, starting to think about why some of them weren't adopted. So as Perry mentioned previously, we're really going to focus on that people part of OCM. So, you know, as she gave us that definition, you know, OCM is really that framework for managing that people side of change. So the people are in that top pink bubble. So, you know, no matter how smooth the process we design or how slick that new technology is, if we fail to embrace the people who have to make that change, you know, we're not going to see the full fruits of our labor. We're not going to see that project fully implemented. So today we're going to talk about those people, that people side of change. And then we're going to give you a few processes or models that you might be able to follow to help support the change. And then last but not least, we're going to give you some technology or some tools or techniques that you can use to help facilitate the change in your organization. So our intent by the end of this is that you understand the who, the how, and then you get some actual tools and strategies to use to take back to your org. So as we kind of already talked a little bit about, you know, why change doesn't happen. Did you see some of these in your conversation? So was poor communication a possibility, right? People didn't know about the change or why they needed to change. So again, just feel free to throw them in the chat if you've seen any of these. Anybody see poor communication or maybe some fear of change? If any of these resonate with you, feel free to type them in. You know, was training an issue? Was there not enough training, or it came too late? Maybe there wasn't the executive support, so maybe leadership wasn't fully supporting the change, or maybe there were some conflicting views about the change, right? So maybe people thought that you know, they didn't necessarily need it. Yep. Lack of confidence, seeing that a lot. Yeah. So people, we rolled out this new tech, but people just flat out weren't confident using it, right? And then sometimes there's budgetary constraints, right? So maybe there has to be enough time and energy and resources put to something. So yeah, you guys can all see this, right? So these are the kinds of things that we want to help address, right? So in order to address those, we need to understand why this happens and who this is happening to and how these people, like who these people are, so that we can fully address all of these things. Yeah, fantastic. Okay, so in Everett Rogers' book, Diffusion of Innovation, 5th edition, right? He placed adopters of innovation into 5 different categories. So when you're thinking about types of adopters, think about your stakeholders or your interested parties, the people that you are making this change for. So when you're rolling in any kind of new project, right, these are the people that are impacted by your change. So as you're looking at this curve, take a look at the chart, and in the chat, tell me where you think you are personally. Are you an innovator, an early adopter? Maybe you're part of that early majority, or are you a laggard? Just go ahead and put in the chat where you think you are. And I'll give you an example from my personal life. So I recently realized that I am an early majority, not an early adopter. And how I found this out was that my husband had placed an order, a pre-order for the Cybertruck, the new Tesla Cybertruck, right? Woohoo! Okay, so The time came when we were supposed to, take delivery of this Cybertruck. We got the email that we were going to get the Cybertruck, but it was going to be $40,000 more than it was supposed to when we first signed up for it 5 years ago. And as we're watching reviews on YouTube, looks like all the kinks aren't worked out, and there's still some technical issues, and it's not quite getting the range it wants to, that it was supposed to. And so we quickly realized that we were not we were not innovators, we were not early adopters, we were not wanting to work on all those kinks. We were really early majority. We kind of wanted to wait until they worked some of the kinks out before we adopted it. So kind of interesting to realize that even though my husband and I are both in technology and we both love new technology, that when it comes to spending that kind of money, we were kind of early majority. So looks like in our group, we have lots of early adopters, a couple of late majority, and Perry's all of the above, right?
Well, I was noticing Sarah mentioned that she's all of them, like she's been all of them. It depends. And so I thought that was an interesting response too.
Yeah, absolutely. So ironically, thinking about my example, my husband has simultaneously been a beta tester for full self-driving at some points, but then also didn't want to buy the Cybertruck right away. So yeah, I totally agree with you. It kind of depends. So now that we know a little bit about us, think about your staff and the industries that you serve and the folks who are going to be adopting your change, right? You're going to have them all over the map. So some departments might have more early adopters and some might not, right? Just kind of depending on where they work and where their comfort level is. So just kind of keep in mind, you're going to probably have these folks all over the map and all for all of your projects. So now that we know a little bit about the curve, and ourselves, let's consider these different perspectives. So each of these is a different type of stakeholder or adopter when it comes to the change being proposed by your next tech project. So you're in thinking about your next project, you're going to have all of these people who are going to be stakeholders for your project. So let's take a look at them and where they might fit onto this model. So as a group, let's see if we can identify where these types of adopters might be on the adoption curve. So in the chat, as I read a statement, think about that person who might say this and tell me which category of adopter they might be. So who might say, I hate technology? Which of these types of adopters? So go ahead and type in the chat. Yep. You guys nailed it. Those are our laggards, right? They're going to be last to adopt our technology. You guys got it. Okay, how about who might be first in line when the new iPhone comes out? Yeah, you guys got it. Early adopters, right? So they are first in line when it comes out to adopting that new technology. So who might be a beta tester for full self-driving? Yeah, you guys nailed it. You got it. Those are the innovators, right? They're testing the new stuff. They're the ones who might be even on a proof of concept for something, right? So yeah, they're ahead of the curve. They're testing something before it even comes out. You guys got it. All right, who might be okay with tech, but maybe still likes to wait until all the kinks are worked out? Yep, you guys got it. Early majority. And then last but not least, who wants to wait until all of those are out? That is those late majorities. You got it. Nice job. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about each type of adopter in a little more detail so we can understand what they need and how we can best serve their needs. So again, category one, those innovators, right? Those beta testers for full self-driving. So they're your tech enthusiasts. They're going to prioritize tech, both in their personal and professional lives, right? They're the ones who walk into a meeting and they've got the iPad and the Apple Watch and maybe they've got the new goggles, right? They've got all the new tech. So they like to be involved early. So if you know who those innovators are, those might be the folks you want to invite to be part of a proof of concept or testing out any new tech you're looking to roll out, right? They're trailblazers. So even though they're a small part of your population, maybe 2.5%, their enthusiasm is really going to help to reinsure others. So you kind of need these people, right? They're going to be helping you test out and work out some of the kinks before you roll it out. So we need those folks. So keep in mind, who are those folks that you have in your organization or on your teams? All right. So after those innovators, our second category are those early adopters, right? They're the visionaries. They can see the potential. They can see where this new tech might help folks out. Um, they eagerly embrace tech, but they're looking for kind of something revolutionary, not just like not going from Rev 1 to Rev 2. They want to see some major breakthroughs. They are willing to take high risks, and they're also influential. So these are your reference for other adoption groups. So if you're later in this presentation, Andrew's going to talk to you about using champions. These are your folks that might turn out to be your champions, right? They're the ones who are going to kind of be the cheerleaders for this new technology. So keep those in mind. So again, as we're going through these, think about who these folks are on your teams or in your organization that you might be able to tap into for this. All right, category 3 are early majority. So these are the practical pragmatists. They like technology, but they're more driven by practicality. So for example, my husband and I, when it came to buying a $100,000 Cybertruck, we decided that wasn't particularly practical, right? That we were going to wait for that purchase, right? So we wanted more evidence of low risk. So the fact that the Cybertruck wasn't getting the range we expected and it didn't have all the features was a little too risky for us. So we weren't willing to invest in that just yet. So keep in mind that folks like us, or the rest of you who said that you were early majority, we make up 34% of the population. So that's fairly significant. And we are essential to kind of move it over the hump, right? So this is the majority that's going to kind of help get us there. So this is the folks that help get momentum to bring it over. So these are the folks that you definitely want to make sure you're engaging. And again, Andrew will talk about some strategies we can use to engage these folks. Okay, category 4 are those late majority folks. So these are the folks that are a little more conservative. Again, this is a big chunk. This is about the same size as the early majority. They might share a lot of the same concerns as the early majority, but are definitely more resistant to change. So everybody use React, show me a thumbs up or a heart or a clap if you can identify who those late majority folks are in your organization. If you have people that are resistant to change. Yeah. Right? They're out there. We know they're out there. So how do we help them adopt this change, right? These are the folks that are content with the status quo. So like in my breakout room, we were talking about how, we already bought a system. We finally like our system. We don't want to adopt a new system, right? We're totally fine with status quo. Again, these folks prefer to wait until a tech becomes, a standard before adopting it. So, let other people figure it out and then we'll take it. So these are your folks that are going to need a lot of support when it comes to implementing the change. They're going to need proof that there's like zero risk before they're going to take this on. So keep that in mind. And again, start to think about who these folks are and what kind of support they might need to adopt our change. And last but not least are laggards, right? These are the skeptics. Again, show me a reaction if you've got some laggards and that you can think of in your organization that are going to resist the change no matter what. Yeah, we have them, right? They make up a smaller percentage. They're like 16% of the total population, right? But they truly believe that technologies fail more often than not, right? And that tech often fails to deliver the value that it's promised. So these are your folks that are going to be really concerned about, well, what if this and what if that? So we need to handle them carefully. They're absolutely crucial because their criticism can really derail our projects. And we have to bring everybody along with us, right? We can't have all but this 16% adopt the change. It's not going to work. So we do have to win them over. And again, we'll have to talk about strategies that work fantastic for these folks because these are very different motivations and very different strategies that we need to apply for these folks. So now that we've taken a little deeper dive into all of the different types of adopters, we're going to switch gears and talk a little bit about some models we can use to help folks adopt the change. Yeah, Perry, I love that. No staff member left behind. Right. Okay, so let's move into this model. Now that we know those adopters, how do we make sure we're giving them everything that they need to be successful? So again, as Perry mentioned, ProSci is an organization that specializes in change, and this is their ADKAR model. It's an individual change framework. So that means it's focused on how we help each individual. Um, and it really outlines kind of what's required to bring individuals along our change. So keeping in mind, this happens one person at a time. So we kind of talked about the types of folks, but keep in mind, everybody's an individual. We have to bring them all along with us. So we'll talk a little bit about sort of these different components of the ADKAR model. So the first one's really an awareness, which just means that you not only need to know that the change is coming, but you need to know like why we need this change, right? So I'll give you an example. I was on a recruiting project. We had 10 districts sign up to be part of this recruiting project, and you could tell that the leadership had signed up for the recruiting project, but maybe some of the people actually doing the recruiting work weren't sure why they were part of the project or why they needed a new recruiting module. So awareness is like not just that we're doing this, but why are we doing this? What problem are we trying to solve? And then once they understand what problem we're trying to solve, then they have to have the desire, right? I actually have to want this new system. I actually have to see this as a value add. I have to want the change. Otherwise, I'm going to resist it, right? So after we get through kind of documenting, okay, where are we at right now, then how do we transition? I need the knowledge, which isn't just training on how to do it, but then also the ability to do it. So great, you gave me training, but can I demonstrate that I can actually use the new system, right? Do I have the skills that it takes? So not just I know how to do it, but I actually am able to do this. And it fits with my work and the way I do things. And then last but not least, after I know it and I can do it, I need reinforcement, right? Without reinforcement, what am I going to do? Probably go back to my old system, right? If there's no incentive to keep going, I'm going to put this bluntly, if you don't turn off the old system, right, I'm going to go back and use the old system. So we need all of these different components in order to make sure change happens. So this is a great model. It kind of gives you high level what needs to happen. But what I really like, my pride and joy, my favorite model is this Libet-Noster model for managing complex change. So it's one of my favorite models because I really feel that we've all been here. We've all been on projects that maybe didn't get the outcomes we were expecting. And so this kind of really helps nail down why change might not happen and what we need to do about it. And yes, I agree. They need to turn off old Outlook for Perry so that she'll adopt new Outlook. Yes. Great example. Yeah. So let's talk about this Libet-Noster model and see where that might fit. So in a perfect world, for change to occur, we need to have vision. We need to know why we are making this change. So Perry, you need to adopt new Outlook because it's more safe and secure, right? And then skills. Okay, Perry, let me do a one-on-one training with you and I'll teach you how to use new Outlook, right? And then there has to be incentive. Hey, Perry, if you use new Outlook, you're going to have all these new benefits you don't have with old Outlook. And then we're going to have to give you the resources. Okay, Perry, here, take 2 hours out of your day on Friday to practice using new Outlook. And then here's a plan. Okay, we're going to have you turn it on Friday. I'm going to spend 2 hours with you going through it. You can watch this video. And then if you have questions, you can call the support line, right? So if we build out that amazing plan, you know why, you have the skills, there's a reason to do it. We're giving you the resources you need. There's a plan in place. What are we going to get? Change, right? Perry's going to adopt new Outlook. Sorry, we're picking on you, Perry. All right. But what happens if we don't have all of those pieces in place? Let's just sort of talk through that for a moment. Okay, so let's say there's no vision. Perry doesn't have any idea why she should be using new Outlook. You know, okay, she watched the video, the training video. She saw that there's some benefits, right? There's Tech Training Tuesday to give her some tools and training tips on it. And maybe there's even a plan to watch the video. But if she doesn't know why, what are we going to get? Confusion. Perry's like, I don't know. Why should I use this? I don't understand, right? There's no vision for it. All right. What if there's a vision? She knows why, but the skill set's just not there. There wasn't a training video. There wasn't a Tech Training Tuesday. She didn't really have the ability to build those skills to use new Outlook. She understood that the incentives and she had the resources, but if she didn't have the training or the skills, Perry, are you feeling a little anxious about using new Outlook? Right? Maybe she's just not confident. She's anxious about it. All right. Let's say she understands the why, she's got the skills, but there's just no reason. New Outlook's no better than Outlook. There's no incentive to use it, right? It's not more secure. It doesn't have more features. What's she going to do? Resist the change, right? Just not use it. not ever adopt it, right? Yep. Chelsea's saying that's the one, right? Resist it. There's no incentive. It's not better than what I'm currently doing. I'm not going to do it, right? All right. Moving on. She knows why. She's got the skills. It's a better product, so there's an incentive to use it, but she doesn't have the resources. And the resources aren't just money. It's not just financial. It might be the time. Hey, she hasn't had the time to invest in learning how to use this new tool. Or, okay, it takes, take some time to learn how to use it or to pivot. Maybe she's got to recreate some stuff in new Outlook she doesn't want to do from her old Outlook, right? She's like, yes. So if she doesn't have the time for it, she's going to see frustrated, right? So, I saw this again on my recruiting project, even if they wanted to adopt it, if they weren't given the time to focus on it, frustration, right? And then last but not least, we've got the vision, we know why we want to do this. She's got the skills and incentives, even the resources, but there's just no plan, right? Like, she's got the time, there's training available, but nobody said, Perry, okay, I want you to take this Friday and go through these modules and figure this out and take the time you need to move over all your folders, whatever configuration you need to do to make this happen. False starts, right? So exactly what she said. She tries it and she didn't like it, she turns it off, right? So false starts. So again, why I love this model is you can kind of see and even use it as a diagnostic, right? As Perry put in the chat, you can use it as a diagnostic tool to help identify, hey, if I'm seeing people, maybe resist the change, what might be missing? What do we need to be focusing on, right? So can you guys see how this might apply in some of your projects that you guys have going on right now? Is there anything that's like, wow, like a light bulb just went off? Yeah. So just out of curiosity, yes. So I'm seeing reactions. Yes. Anybody want to raise hand and share or put in the chat like what they saw missing that is now like, oh wow, just connected the dots there. So I know we've been talking about this. Our goal is for you to be able to take this back and apply this to yours. So yeah, Perry, you want to share?
Well, I know you're making a big joke about my case, but to me, it's also incentives. And I think someone called that out in the chat. And I think oftentimes we think of incentives as what can we give people? But sometimes we need to think about like, I am incentivized to keep using the old version because it's there, right? And so I'm thinking back, we tried to roll out Microsoft Teams. We did roll out Microsoft Teams and we had great success, but there had been a chunk of people who were really into Skype, and we had brought on, I think like 100 people in our organization who, like, one department all had Skype, and we never turned it off. And we're like, why aren't they going to the new one? Like, it's right there. It's so much better. And that was clearly the answer. They were incentivized to use the old one because it was there. So we literally did sunset it, turned it off, and then, I mean, in the end, it was forced in that way. But I just wanted to clarify, incentives isn't always just giving people, a gift card or something to do something.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. Incentives can be better features, better functionality, saving time, saving money. Yeah, in general, trying to make life easier, right?
Or your favorite thing, Risa, what's in it for me? You gotta answer that question for the users. What's in it for me? That's the incentive.
Yeah, absolutely. And if it's not, I mean, Perry and Andrew and Candace have heard me say this a million times. If the old system is easier and there are not these incentives, people are going to use the old system until you literally turn it off, right? So, yeah. So looking at the chat, yeah. So we saw incentives. Yeah, Doug, I agree. There's a subtle distinction between the skills and the resources. So skills is like I know how to do it versus the resources as I might have the time or the manpower, because maybe we know how, but it might take a lot of effort. So for example, going back to my recruiting project, people had all of their job descriptions in one system and we needed to port them over to the new system. That's a lot of effort, especially if you have hundreds of job descriptions. And so did they have the manpower and the time to do that work, right? If we don't give them that, then it's easier to just kind of stay in the old system and people get frustrated. So yeah. Any other examples or any connections people are making with projects they've done before? So
Elliot
Carlos
had written, we frequently miss multiple items, not just one.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. That's again why this is helpful, is because this can kind of help you narrow down some of those things. So looks like I saw Chelsea raise her hand.
Yeah, actually, mine is a little bit different than everybody else's, but it was more of frustration. And I brought this up in our breakout room. We haven't had a problem too much with adoption, but we have had a problem with adoption and then follow through to the end. So part of it was our transportation department decided to go with a new company because they wanted an all-in-one system for their fleet maintenance and routing and all this stuff. They got frustrated because their old system was easier, but they didn't have the resources to know how to use the routing system. They still use every other component, just not that one. So it's kind of, this is amazing, this structure and how it all lines up. And then you're just like, how did I not think of this before? So this is great.
Yeah. Glad you find it helpful. I first came across this, I'm sorry to say 20 years ago, like in the, really honestly in the late 90s, is when I first was shown this. And I just, to this day, just find it so valuable. So thank you for sharing that. Michael, did you want to share?
Yeah, the one thing that came to mind for me is risk within this, because the status quo is safe. And so what really unlocked for me was hearing Perry talk about how you are incentivized to your old system. You're incentivized because you already have the workarounds, you already have the skills. It's the safer option. And really, to me, the vision is kind of the unlock to that. You need it all, but that vision of why are we moving to something different? Why is it that I should even take the risk of finding out what else is available can really unlock and reason to change.
Yeah, absolutely. Great point, Michael. And vision comes not just from the project team, but your sponsors. For example, on my recruiting project, we're dealing with leadership and HR departments from 10 different school districts. So it's not just our vision and our leadership, but kind of that distributed model of leadership, right? So how do we make sure everybody's on board with the vision? So yeah, excellent point. All right. Anything else you guys want to talk about with this model? So again, we gave this to you in the handout. You'll have the PowerPoint later, so you can kind of take this back. Highly recommend sharing this with your team, kind of using, it's meant to be a planning model, but it can also be used, as somebody mentioned in the chat, as like a diagnostic tool to kind of help us figure out if we already have something in flight or something that happened. And something was missing. So as Chelsea said, if we're noticing frustration, how can we get people the resources that they need to be successful, So feel free to take it and run with it. And you can Google Lippitt-Noster model. You'll find several versions of this on the internet in different visual stylings to meet your every need. But again, we didn't make this up, but it's super valuable to kind of help figure out why people aren't making the change. So thanks, Perry. And Perry, I'm happy to be a resource to you if you want to walk through New Outlook. I've been on it for a few months now.
Share with me all the great new features that I'm missing out on, Risa.
Well, as a great example, that whole, so we are working a hybrid model. So some days from the office and some days from home. And in the new Outlook, I can easily toggle on and off which days I'm in the office and which days I'm working remotely. So that's a really convenient feature for me. Is that enough incentive, Perry?
Yes.
All right, fantastic. Okay, well, we've talked about a lot of stuff and we've been sitting here for almost an hour. So my sense is all of you could use a quick break. So I'm seeing 10:55 on my, or almost 10:55 on my computer. So if we can be back at 11:05, if that works for everybody, we'll see you back here in 10 minutes.
All right, guys. Let me take control so I have some notes. So, whoa, went too fast. Man, all right. Welcome back, everybody. Hope your break was nice. My dogs knew it was break time. They immediately brought me toys. They know when I stop talking or when the voices stop, that means they can play. So now that Risa's talked us through the types of people that are adopting the change and the models that can kind of help guide your efforts on the strategic end, let's talk about some specific techniques. So these are specific things you can do to have people encourage them to adopt the change. And let's talk about how they apply to your project and how they apply to those people. And a heads up, we're gonna have a breakout at the end, so you've got to pay at least a little bit of attention. If you have your handouts that I think Candace emailed out, these are listed on your handout as the different techniques you might consider. But if you haven't picked up on the theme, it's all about the people. You know, we talk about these people in groups, but it really is change happens at the individual level. So I want you to think about individuals that you know that might identify with these techniques as we go. But in the end, the techniques you use, they need to be people oriented. So these different techniques are going to apply differently to different people. These aren't all going to work for everybody. Like herd mentality is not going to work for your innovators. Contests might not work for your laggards and so on. So we're going to kind of talk about how these techniques match up with the people that you're trying to have change, adopt your change. Ultimately, you're going to need a combination probably. And you also need to think about what's feasible for your project, for your organization. You can't just do everything, even though it might be amazing, because we've all got limited staff and budgets, and sometimes things just don't work. So you're looking at combinations of techniques in the end and right size it. Just like everything in project management, you want to right size your change effort. So diving in, what we have is we've dialed this down into a chart that kind of has all the techniques with the different types of people. If you want to dig in, I'm not going to give you full one slide per technique, but we do have those slides. So Candace is going to send out an email with the slides. And at the very end of that, you can actually go in to see a full slide of how does proof of concepts apply to your different types of people? How does train the trainer apply to different types of people? What are the pros and cons, that kind of thing. So you have those references. If you want to dig in deeper, I recommend it. But in the end, we have our techniques on the left. We have the 5 groups of people across the top. A green star means it's probably an effective fit. A yellow means, maybe. And red means it's probably not a good fit for that type of person. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk through the left side, starting with proof of concepts. And this is what's going to probably be effective for your innovators and early adopters. Proof of concept is just, you know, we've got a new thing that we haven't done before, or we have 3 different possible solutions and we want to try them out. We want to get our users involved. So you might put together a proof of concept and invite some of your innovators and early adopters to come check it out, see what they think. This is where you can start to get early testing done. You can start to identify issues that you didn't realize were there. You know, if all the IT folks don't see these issues, but as soon as you put regular users in front, you go, oh man, this is a usability concern, what have you. Proof of concepts can be great to get your innovators and your early adopters on board. They get excited about the beta testing, the alpha testing. Laggards, probably not going to be excited about that. You might still want to bring them in more from just understanding their viewpoints, but it's not going to be effective for helping them adopt change. Still looking at the same group of people, train the trainer, where we say, okay, I'm going to bring in a few key innovators, early adopters. I'm going to train them on the new product, and then they're going to train others. So you kind of create this network, which is great. The innovators, the early adopters are going to feel good and excited about being involved at that level of the project. And it might be an effective, an efficient way to scale your change by bringing in people that aren't on your project team. Contests might be an effective way to get the innovators and early adopters to buy in, where you just kind of create some excitement about the product. In fact, Perry, maybe you can tell us about how we've used contests in the past.
Sure. We rolled out Microsoft Teams to about 900 people. And one of the things we did for the early adopters and innovators, it's exactly the audience we did it with, was it was called Microsoft Teams Olympics. And so we wanted everyone to know baseline knowledge. And so that was the bronze award. But we wanted people to also try using Teams in new and innovative ways that we hadn't even thought of. And so we gave up to a silver and gold, and basically formed people in small groups who wanted to participate. So we made it, you know, made it fun and gave them these little challenges to participate in over, I think, 8 days is how long we ran the Olympics. And so the different teams went for bronze for sure, and then we had the majority actually go for gold. And so what was really cool is that we got a lot of people using Teams right away, really excited about it, and then we had like an awards ceremony, and we did the whole thing, and it was all virtual the way we did it. We even used Teams for the awards ceremony, but that was a really fun contest that involved basically a gamified approach to training, but through a contest.
And I was on the recipient end of that, and I do remember it was unique. It was fun. It was like, okay, go figure out how to do this. You get points. Go do this above and beyond. You get more points. It was an interesting way to do things. But the late majority of the laggards, they might not really be excited about that. They're just going to go, oh, a stupid game about a stupid Teams thing. I don't care. So think about the people that are going to be excited about this versus those that aren't. Now we get into marketing as a technique. We start to maybe lose the innovators. They don't really respond to marketing. They want that cutting edge stuff, but it's very efficient and it can work for your early adopters. And you start to pick up your early majority because they are looking for the big group of people. Marketing might work for them. Still doesn't work for late majority and laggards. They're not going to self-select and they're not going to volunteer to adopt typically. Incentives are where we start to be able to pick up a little bit more in that late majority. Innovators, they don't need incentives. They're excited to try the latest and greatest. Early adopters will like the incentives. So once we incentivize Perry to adopt Outlook, she will, hopefully that will be an effective technique. It might work for your late majority, but it might not. You might need something stronger than just incentives because they're going to be like, I've got my old ways. It works fine. I don't really care if I can do 3 more new features. And laggards, they don't care about incentives very much. Herd mentality. This one is maybe not so much a technique you're going to apply too much, but it is something that works to get some of your larger adoption groups to adopt. So that's not going to work for your early adopters very well, and it's not going to work for innovators. But you might find some success as the early majority and late majority are going, oh, everybody else is doing it. Okay, I guess I can do it. It's safe. It's fine. Laggards, not going to work for them. They're a resistant group. Group training is kind of like you're train the trainer. Sorry, scratch that. Group training is just the classic. We're all going to get together. 200 people are going to sit here, and I'm going to show you how to use new Outlook, and that's that. Your innovators are going to tune out probably. Your early adopters might tune out, but your majority groups are going to work probably well for that. They're used to the status quo way of operating. Laggards are also going to sit there, and they're going to be, I don't care. Champions is a great one. This is not where you're going to bring in your innovators, early adopters. But the idea here with champions is that, you're going to pick out some champions for your project. They're not part of your project team, but you say, I have some key people that I know have influence in departments. Maybe they're head teachers in certain areas. Whatever it is, they have influence and they're connected to the group that you are trying to get to change. You're going to bring them into your team. They're going to work as champions for your project. They're going to be resources for the people that are adopting the change. And that can be a highly effective way to create the change. How does the added benefit, I think, of also you start to get a network of allies for your project team, which can help in later projects where you say, oh man, Carlos was a great champion on our MFA rollout. And now when I have another project, I know I can go talk to Carlos because he's one of my buddies. So you have long-term investment payoff on there, which is great. And Risa, do you have any examples for champions on our projects?
Yeah. Absolutely. So we've used champions a couple times. We did use champions on our Teams project, our rollout that Perry mentioned. We also used it because it was so successful on our Teams rollout. We used it for our Adobe Sign implementation. So we were rolling out Adobe Sign across our organization. We needed to find out what forms different divisions inside of our organization needed to convert to Adobe Sign. We needed essentially a champion in each division. So LLS, student services, business services. So we talked to their leadership. Their leadership identified who would be part of this champion. So we had at least one champion from each area within our organization. Ironically, those champions tend to be your innovators and early adopters. And they're the ones who are helping bring along that early and late majority, right? So the strategy is to help bring along, our majority folks, but we're using some of those early adopter folks. So The pitch to be part of the Champions program is you are the first to hear information coming from the project team. You help disseminate that information to your part of the organization. You might help us collect information, and then you're seen as this resource or this guide, right? So kind of a little bit bleeding over into the one-on-one. So like you're that source of information if somebody needs a little extra help or guidance for your part of the organization. So those folks that we, and in some cases, it was the same folks we used for Teams that we used for the Adobe Sign implementation. And when we asked them at the end of both projects if they would be willing to do it again, they were all like, yes, absolutely willing to do it again. To kind of incentivize being a champion, we also, Perry wrote very nice letters to their supervisor, letting them know what a great asset they were to the project team. And so there was that sort of inherent kudos and just general sense of like, you're a value added member of our team. You've added value to your team. And so it's kind of a feel good for everybody involved. So people who are those late majority folks who are going for help don't feel like they're going to a stranger or having to call some help desk. They know this person who's kind of helping them and communicating the change. And so we've really found a lot of value in using the champions for any kind of change that we need to distribute out to kind of lots of different teams and how it might look just slightly different kind of on different teams.
One question Jen O had was, could champions be your steering team? What type of people might you be leaning on for your champions?
Yeah, so Jen, usually these champions aren't steering members. They're not usually the decision makers per se. So for example, it might not be, I'll just use ITS as an example. It might not be Terry that's the champion. It might be Eva, who's his admin. So it's usually kind of one step below that decision-making level, and it's more the doers, if you will, right? It's the folks who are on the ground doing the work, the folks that people generally already go to for as a source of information, you know?
One example, when I was on the receiving end of the Monday.com rollout, our champion for our department, I wasn't part of the EPMO at that time, was our admin assistant. So it was already somebody we're always going to for help for that kind of thing. So, and we already have a great relationship with her. She was a great person to be a champion because I'm talking to her on a regular basis anyways. I don't feel like I've got to put in a ticket or go talk to Terry or anything like that. It's somebody I already can naturally just go chat with real quick. So that was a really effective champion relationship. The other thing that's cool about those champions, so you're going to have those for your project, but you might keep that program going as you roll that project into operations. So even though the project is done, we've rolled the change out, that champion network is sticking around for years sometimes if you want to keep latest updates, being a communication channel between the operations team and the stakeholders. So it can be really effective. Perry, did you have something you wanted to tack onto that?
Yeah, I think we covered it, but there's one other idea. I know you haven't talked about one-on-one yet. I know that's coming up, but champions, in my mind, are those great folks who can also help with that one-on-one support. Because on our project team, we don't have the resources available to go sit with every staff, right? Like we don't have that option. So one-on-one is the great tactic for the late majority and laggard. Who's going to do that? So if you have champions and you ask them, like, would you take this on as part of your role? Like if you're in that department and someone comes to you, can we point them? Or if they come to us, can we point them back to you? And that's really what we saw with both Teams and Adobe Sign is as questions around training and how-tos came up, the champions were working with us. So they had that direct line to us, but they were basically helping disseminate and do a lot of that one-on-one, which was a super great model because we're all, constrained by resources and time. Also, they already have that built-in trust with the person in their department. So it just was a win for all of us all the way around.
Now moving into what is honestly one of my favorites, which is one-on-one. So, let's say we've tried everything. We're really not getting those laggards. We've got some dug in people, a small group, they're very vocal, they're really bringing things down. I know this change is good for them. How do I get them to see that? One-on-one, just sit down with them, talk to them about why why is this change difficult for you? Or here's why it needs to happen, or here's what's in it for you specifically. Whatever it is, taking that kind of precise surgical care to get that one person to change. So it is incredibly inefficient because one-on-one with 900 people ain't going to work, but it is also incredibly effective. And this is also where your relationships with your stakeholders and your soft skills can really, really pay off. I can't think of, honestly, a single time where one-on-one really didn't work. If you've got your relationships, you can sit down with people and you can go through that. Here's the vision. How do we get you to get skills? Here's the incentive for you. Here's the resources for you. Here's the action plan. You address all of that. Most people are reasonable, and something is going to click for them if they trust you and they've got good relationships there. In fact, we had a project where another project manager I was working with on a PeopleSoft project, they were rolling out a new system. The old system was still there though. And what do laggards do? They stay on the old system until they get pushed into the new system. We didn't want to force them, so it was like that project manager just ended up calling every single one of them. The email blasts as a group weren't working. The group trainings weren't working. None of these other techniques were working. He ended up just calling them and saying, what can I do to get you, how can I make this work for you? And lo and behold, it takes several days of calling 30 different people, but the change happens. So, and being includer being one of my top 5 strengths, no staff member left behind is really what it's about. So one-on-one is a big deal. All else fails, we can just force Perry to adopt new Outlook. It's fine. It's IT. You got to do it. Hopefully we'd tell you why so you don't hate us, but we got to do it. Security reasons, whatever it is. So force is often a last resort, but it can often be a choice. And then I'd be curious as we go in if you have other ideas of different techniques that we didn't mention. So we're going to go into an activity and you're going to see one of the activity options is fill in the blank. So if you end up filling in that blank with something not here, I'd be really curious to hear what that is. Is there an optimal or recommended timeline as to when force is best to implement? I think that probably dials in very much depending on your project, the context, the severity. Security projects, Carlos would be probably the first to say, eventually you're going to force, like no matter what, this is way more, organization data is way more important than making sure the users feel good sometimes. So force is going to happen, and that's what's got to happen. I would say, though, just off the cuff, force shouldn't be a surprise. Hopefully by then you've tried these softer techniques, you've given the right communications, you've had the more voluntary techniques before you end up just forcing. But sometimes you do have to force. Let's exactly, force is last stage, last resort. So we're going to jump into some kind of practice here. This is the same activity you're going to do on your own, but we're going to do one together. So for this, you'll need the PowerPoint that Candace sent. I've also got, I'll give you, I got the link for you here in a minute if you need it. But what we're going to do is we're going to practice applying these adoption techniques to a project. We're going to kind of see which ones are there, which ones will we use, might we use, or we definitely won't use based on this scenario. So we're going to start off. I'm going to talk to you about a real project from a fake organization. So let me start by introducing the organization. This is ABC Unified. It's a small district, 5 schools, 170 full-time staff, 400 students. So fairly small group of people. 170 full-time staff probably means you've got a tiny project team. Our tech director is Danica McKellar, and she is in charge of rolling out an Apple device refresh. So we're replacing new Macs and Apple TVs. We're getting up-to-date devices with better performance. One of the challenges here is most staff use Macs, some use PCs, and we got to move them over to bump over to the Macs. Students are using iPads, and the meeting rooms also need updated Apple TVs. So that's a lot. In this scenario, though, we're specifically focused on change. So her goal, and she's coming to you with this goal, is to get students and staff excited about the new devices, ensuring our PC users successfully transition. Every single one's got to transition. This isn't a change where, 99% of people adopted. No, 100% of people have to adopt. And we got to make sure they all feel confident and they can actually use it correctly. Otherwise, we're going to be hearing about it from our superintendent probably. So with that, we're going to talk through this PowerPoint slide. So this is the slide I hope you have in front of you. If not, please do open it. You can either grab it from the email that Candace sent, or you can just click the link right on there and it'll open you a view-only mode that you can still manipulate. So the activity here is we're going to take these techniques from the right. We're just going to drag them over to we're either definitely going to use them, might use them, or won't use them. And I'm just going to kind of work you through this. When you do this on your own, you're going to do it with your own project. So you don't have to do it with me, but I'm going to kind of talk through how this project would work for me. So train the trainer. I'm probably not going to do that for a computer rollout. It doesn't seem effective, so I'm not going to use that. Herd mentality. Also probably not going to use that. They've all got to change. It's not a, oh, I see everybody else using the shiny new gear, I'm going to do it too. No, you've got to use the new gear. I might do contests. You know, we might want to gamify, especially for the PC users, how the new Mac might go find this thing that you used to do in the PC. Now you get a prize if you find it on the Mac option. Champions, I am definitely going to use that. I have a small project team. These are teachers where the networks are very tight. I'm going to go try to get the influential early adopting teachers to be my champions for this project. Group training, I might use that. I don't know if it's effective or if training is really needed. If most of my people are Mac users, maybe I just give them a job aid. We don't actually need to do group training. And the PC people are probably going to need more than a group training to change over. Force, big yes. Some of you guys, I'm sorry. I know you love your PC from your gateway laptop, but you've got to move to a Mac. It's just how that's going to work. Marketing, I'm almost always going to use marketing. It might not be a big push, but it's so efficient. And really, you could just call that good communication sometimes. Proof of concept, I'm not going to use. This is a pretty routine project. I don't think we need to try a bunch of options out or build out any concepts, so we're not going to do that one. One-on-one, though, I am going to lean on that very heavily. I'm going to expect probably every single PC user to need one-on-one support. And this is where if you guys have a fill in the blank that you might use, I'd be very curious to see what that ends up being. So that's the whole activity. Is we're going to ask you to just do that for yourself, for your own project. So grab the PowerPoint. Again, you can click the link there. Just grab the shapes, move them into the columns, what you're thinking of. So just take those adoption techniques, match them up with your project, or maybe with the past project. If you don't have a current project, think about the past projects that had failed or were difficult to change, and maybe see how you might apply these techniques to that project. For sure, think about your people, think about what's effective and what's feasible with the teams that you have, because you can't do it all. So we're going to do this solo, just here, 5 minutes. We'll put in a little music and just knock it out. After this, we'll go into breakouts for 10 minutes and discuss, what you chose for your project, why you thought that was a good fit, or why you thought things weren't a good fit. So I talked a lot. Does that make sense for everybody? Throw your hand up in the if you got questions, or in the chat, and give you some time.
I thought you were going to say throw your hand in the air.
Like you don't care about change. All right. That was 5 minutes. That went pretty quick. So hopefully you kind of had some reflection and some chance to try those out. If Candace is ready, we're going to send you off into some breakouts and discuss. Again, what you chose, why you chose it, or why you didn't choose those things, either for future projects or past projects. Candace, are we good to go?
Yeah, I'm going to open the room right now. Thank
Awesome. I'll see you guys in 10 minutes. And we're going to ask you to share out. Sorry, so heads up. All right, welcome back, everybody. It sounds like you had some good conversation. I'm not going to drag this share out too long, but if I can get a couple of folks to raise their hands and maybe just share some of the takeaways that you had in this, any ahas for you. I'll also be curious to hear if anybody has things they are excited to start trying right away. If you'd like to share out, just hit that raise hand button up on the top. Either that or you got to listen to me keep talking. Asha, thank you for going first. How was it?
Hey, so somebody's got to be brave. Lunch is in 15 minutes, right?
That's right.
So I shared with my group that my particular project is not an IT project. I don't work in IT, but a project is a project, and there's always resistance and sort of that cycle to an implementation. And what I realized in the process is that we have not been utilizing incentives nearly as much as we could. And some of it is sort of philosophical, right? Because there's a core belief on the project team that people should appreciate what we're trying to implement for the sake of it, because it's fantastic and fabulous, right? And so beneficial to everybody. And I think, we kind of got swept away with that philosophical notion, forgetting that not everybody thinks the way that the project team does, and that incentives are in fact a valid way of sort of bringing folks along for the ride. So that was very cool. Thank you for that.
So I love that because, why can't they just see that this is for their own good? Why can't they see we're doing this for the obvious reasons? And Risa says this so often. I know I said it earlier, what's in it for me? That's how you kind of hook them. Either incentives, prizes, or incentives to use the new system, that it's better for them. It's going to make their lives easier or address whatever problem they've got. Thank you for that. Appreciate that. Carlos.
Yeah, so from our example, I was sharing with the group that here at SCCOE, specifically cybersecurity, we are restructuring the use of Monday.com. And so it's a twofold goal. Number one is I want to develop a dashboard, or basically develop a dashboard that will feed from various boards that my team already has currently worked on to track their progress on different projects and initiatives that they're involved in and working on. And so not reinventing the wheel, not asking everybody to, start fresh with a brand new board. So just what is working, and let's take that and plug it into a dashboard. But then the second part of that goal is, and really the reason why behind the why of this is, we want to capture all the amazing work that our department is doing and showcasing it in a nice dashboard that any stakeholder can look up and see, hey, what is the security, what are cybersecurity guardians are working on? What's the status on this? Or high level, like, our board members, what is the level of impact that our cybersecurity team is having across all 42 LEAs and charter schools? And so the why and the reasons behind that are very important. So the three strategies that I chose is train the trainer, so training my team, training myself, and really going over the specific goals of the why, starting with the group training, but then from there moving it into the one-to-ones as well. And so we have check-ins every week with the team, but then I'm going to be scheduling one-to-ones to just make sure that everybody feels comfortable and understands the why of this project. And those two strategies, for me, I think it's going to, hopefully it'll move the needle in the right direction of where we want to be. And again, this is SCCOE. We're very fortunate that right next to me is Perry. So I knock on her door and she's there, and I can always chime in. And the same thing with Kirby. We met recently, and I got to pick his brain with some automations and using Monday.com. And so I would say fill in the blank is utilize your resources. Who is a champion? Who are the people that are great at using those tools, or might encourage you? Maybe you reach out to some of the folks in this training for some tips and advice and ideas.
Very cool. I dig that. I like how you married the Lippitt Noster model and making sure that vision is there so that your team they understand why, and they're hopefully more receptive to the change. I appreciate that. Brad, I'll call on you, and then we'll move on to some wrap up.
Yeah, I just had a quick comment. I was in the meeting. I was in a group with Jen and John A, and we were talking about how we would use these things. And initially I was like, I don't like to force. I didn't want to put force as a yes, I would definitely use. But then after we had a conversation, we sometimes have to force people to adopt the system. Like for our example, we were talking about a help desk, and you can't just let some people use it and some others. So I was saying, after talking with John A through this, I was like, yeah, we definitely need to force people to use it, but also use the other things where we have one-on-ones and we have a train the trainer, and we use marketing, which is huge. I like the marketing part of it, because you have to build excitement for things that might not be that exciting, and how it's going to benefit the end user, and not just because we want to do this because it's good for the IT department. How's it going to be good for you throughout, in your workflow or your daily job? So that was important to me. It was a good conversation.
And marketing might not be effective on its own, but it can be. It can kind of prime the pump. So when it does come time for you to talk to them directly, I remember seeing about that, and maybe that makes the conversation a little less jarring for some of those folks. One thing before we wrap up, I just want to kind of leave you with something to think about that Perry mentioned, which is, in the ideal world, we do it all. We'd hit everybody. We have infinite resource, infinite time, et cetera. But if you could really only pick a specific area to focus your efforts, what would you choose? And I don't need any. This is more rhetorical, but I'd like you to think about that. When you're looking at these groups of people here, your innovators, early adopters, majorities, and laggards, where do you need to spend your efforts, the bulk of your efforts? Where is it going to be effective? Where it's going to hit the most amount of people? And something you might think about is, these first two groups, they're going to kind of self-volunteer for that change. They're going to be excited about the change typically. They're going to be easier to get. This early majority group is really important because once you get them, as you go up this hump, you get them, and now these groups start to happen a little bit easier. You really can't get these groups until you get this early majority. You start getting up that hump. It's kind of like a roller coaster. You got to get up the top of the hill before the rest of the hill, before the fall can happen. And when you reference that with our techniques, I think you'll see that a lot of the early majority techniques are very doable. So that might not be the right answer for everybody, but I'd like you to think about that. Kind of have that in your head of where do I focus my efforts, and how do these different groups relate to each other. So with that, I'm going to hand over to Perry to wrap us up.
Oh, that was so seamless. Yeah, that was nice,
So
Andrew.
smooth.
So smooth. All right, everyone. It's been, let me take control here. It's been wonderful talking about all of these ideas with you. And so just as we're wrapping, wanted to kind of recap briefly. You've got this one handout that we packaged up as your main takeaway. It's got a definition of OCM at the top. It's got that reminder of the model with the 5 different types of adopters. We left you with the 2 change models. So Lippitt Noster, ADKAR, and then those bulleted points of why change typically doesn't happen. And then at the bottom, this adoption techniques grid. And in the PowerPoint deck at the very back, we have all the resource slides. So all of these different styles of adoption techniques are defined in case that helps you. Our goal was that you'd be able to say that you know the different types of adopters. So get your React button out. I want to see, can you say yes to number 1? I know the different types of adopters. Are you walking away with new knowledge or a reminder of what they are? Awesome. Okay. Number 2, can you identify why initiatives aren't adopted? And that Lippitt Noster is a great diagnostic, or you can think through these different reasons. Excellent. And 3rd, we took you through an exercise. Can you choose techniques to facilitate adoption? Do you have a new take on what different techniques would help? Awesome. That's great. That was our goal today. Sounds like we were successful. Now, if you want more, our next workshop that we're offering is next month. It's on April 17th. This one is called, our workshop is called EQ for IT Projects. And our team is actually reading this book right now. It's called Soft Skills for Hard People. And we're basically going to come back and share some strategies that we've heard or read from this book that are really around bringing emotional intelligence to work. And what does that look like in IT? Because typically, that might be a hard thing for us to grasp sometimes. So sign up for that. The link is available for you right there. If you click it, that's registration. I also linked the book. So if you click the book right now, you can see on Amazon what that book's all about if you wanted to check it out. So that's coming up. We'd love to see you there. Also wanted to highlight, we have a conference coming up in June. This is our 3rd annual conference. We're really excited about it. We're really pleased to announce that this year it's free. It's on Friday, June 21st. It's virtual, it's free, so no travel. Many of you who are here have attended a conference of ours in the past, and so we're glad that we've met along the way. Some of you here have spoken at a previous conference, and some of you are speaking at this one. So we're really excited to share out so much information. There's a beginner track. So if you wanted to bring your entire team to help introduce them more to what project management is in the IT context, beginners can learn here on this day. We've got some intermediate and advanced topics. So if you've been plugging away at this for a while and you want to expand, there's an offering for you. And then we have these fantastic share outs from other organizations. So we've got school districts, charter schools, and county offices of education sharing a whole smattering of topics, including software, creating job descriptions around this, how to get stakeholder buy-in, all these different things from the lens of people who are out there trying it out. So we're excited about that. Let me finish this out here. If you are at an organization or a shop where you're really ready to take more steps to formalize this in your department, your division, or even your entire organization, we've got a second part of our conference that's paid. And we're recommending 1 to 2 people per org if you're in this place. So this is really more about coming down to San Diego, getting together and having strategies to actually take this back and implement it so it takes off. That's the goal. So it's less tactical and learning about specific pieces and really more about how can we create change in a division. So we're finalizing the cost still on that one. We're targeting about $200 for the day and a half conference, but we need to get that all wrapped up and squared away. And registration is going to open on Monday, so that will be on our website. Check out our website, and that's where you'll find the registration link. So in other words, bring an entire team to this first one, and people get to pick and choose what they want from that day. If you're feeling ready to really take these next steps, we would recommend that a very small number of people come to figure out how to do that, to move this forward in your org. It's 11:57. I'm going to bypass the promo video that we have, but we do have a promo video from last year that is on our website in case you wanted to get a sense of what the conference was like last year. And as we're wrapping now, just wanted to again invite you to stay in touch. We've got our email address right here, so reach out if you have any questions or you wanted to stay connected. And then again, all of our resources, future trainings, templates, tutorials, a whole bunch of goodies are out at epmo.sdcoe.net. Thanks for your time today. Good luck on your next project. We'll see you at the next one. Bye.